Melissa, and I am homeschooling mama to 3 kiddos. And my youngest kid has a rare illness and accompanying life-threatening allergies, quite a long list of them. And so a lot of what I post on my channel is mom content, homeschool content, and allergy life / chronic illness life content. A lot of homeschooling, mostly mom kind of stuff. So if you're into that kind of thing and you're new here, I hope you'll hit that subscribe button and stick around. If you've been here before, welcome back. I'm glad to see you. Today, we're going to finally talk about Gather Round Homeschool Curriculum. So if you have seen my channel, anything on my channel or on my Instagram, you can find me at The Little Four That Could on Instagram also, and also on Facebook at The Little Four That Could. But if you watch either of those places, you have probably noticed that we recently started using the Gather Round Homeschool Curriculum, and I have been promising a full review of the curriculum. So that's what we're doing today. So if you're interested in hearing my thoughts about Gather Round Homeschool, then stick around. Okay, so I am going to do my best to not jump around all over the place today. I had one of my subscribers ask if I was ADHD because I jump around a lot, and she's not wrong. And so I'm sorry if you ever feel like I'm hard to follow, that I'm jumping all over the place. That's just sort of who I am and what I do. So I'm gonna try not to do that. I do have some notes in front of me, so if you catch me looking down, it's because I'm looking at those, because I do generally try to make some notes about what I want to say, but I also don't just structure everything out, because I want what I'm saying to be authentic and honest and not contrived, and I want to be truthful with you, and I want you to hear my heart. So I try to find a balance between knowing ahead of time what I want to talk about without it being scripted, so that it's still authentic, if that makes sense. So the first thing I want to tell you about is I just want to give you a really brief idea of what Gather Round Curriculum is, if you haven't heard of it before. So if you have, you might want to skip ahead. If you haven't, which a lot of people haven't, it's a relatively new homeschool curriculum. So if you haven't, Gather Round is a homeschool curriculum that is unit study based, and it is meant for all of your children, no matter what age, stage, ability they are, grade level they are. It is intended for you to all gather around together and do it together. So that was very appealing for me. And I only have 3 children, and I know that some of you probably have a lot more than that. And 2 of mine are technically 7th graders, so they're technically on the same level, but they're very different from one another. They have very different needs. They have very different personalities. And so for some things, it just doesn't work to do things together with them. And then I also have a kindergartner. So I have a very large age gap between my children. So obviously, some things you can't do together, like math. We cannot do together. That would be impossible to do 7th grade math alongside kindergarten math, clearly. So for math, I use 3 totally different math curriculums, even though my older 2 are in the same grade. Like I said, they have very different learning styles, very different needs, very different personalities. And so we use 2 separate curriculums for them. My daughter uses teaching textbooks, and so she's 100% independent on her math, unless she's just really, really struggling with something and having trouble with it, which is generally doesn't happen. So she is pretty much 100% independent on her math. My boys, both of my boys, one is a 7th grader, one is a kindergartner, need and want my one-on-one attention in math with them. And so I literally have to have 3 math classes a day, essentially, for our homeschool. And so if you're a homeschooler, you know that, time management is essential, especially when you do have more than one kid, because you're trying to fit everybody's schooling all into the same day. It's not like when you teach at traditional school and you have a whole classroom full of fourth graders. And while there is some individualized learning and teaching going on in a traditional classroom setting, it's nothing like having a seventh grader and a fourth grader. Or, your age gap may be even bigger than ours. So obviously, time management is essential. So when I saw this idea that I could teach all of my children all of their subjects except math together at once, that was such an appealing concept for me. And so I immediately started looking into it. And obviously, when you first hear that, you're like, what? That can't work. You can't teach everybody all the subjects all at the same time. So let me just give you a brief idea of what that looks like. So we started with the North American Birds unit. And so what happens is you have a teacher's guide, and then you have levelized books for each of your children. They each have their own books. So for us, we had 2 middle schoolers. Okay. And then my kindergartner was in the early reader book. Okay. So essentially the way it works is in the teacher's guide for each lesson, you do a lesson, 1 lesson a day. That's how it was made. Now, of course, you can do it differently if you want, but it was intended for you to use 1 lesson a day, 5 days a week, and be finished in a month, or do 1 lesson a day, 4 days a week, and be done in 5 weeks. So we school 4 days a week. We do not school on Fridays unless something just crazy happens and we need to. But generally speaking, we school 4 days a week. And so each lesson has a section in the teacher's guide that you read aloud to all of your kiddos together. That's the very first thing you do when you gather around. You gather around, the teacher reads out of the teacher's guide a section, it's not super long, about whatever the topic of that particular lesson happens to be. So in this particular unit, which is about North American birds, every single lesson was about a different bird. I'm trying to show you. So lesson 1, bald eagle. Okay, lesson 2 was the ruby-throated hummingbird. So you all read this together, and then she encourages you to go on rabbit trails, which means to just investigate more about what you're learning. So we pretty much every day were watching YouTube videos to go along. We also found some documentaries. We found some awesome books at the library. Thankfully, I was able to go to the library before what hit. And everything shut down. So I have quite a selection of library books that I was able to get before all that went down. And there's an awesome YouTuber called Leslie the Bird Nerd. I think that's what it's called. She has beautiful, beautiful videos, beautiful footage of the birds, great information. We've loved her channel. So anyway, so generally speaking, every day we would read the read aloud, and then we'd investigate some more, watch some YouTube videos, dig in our library books, get online. My bigger kids would do their own research. And then after every lesson, each student has 5 pages in their notebook that they're going to complete. And they're essentially on the same topic, but they go in depth to a different place depending on the age level, if that makes sense. I'll just give you an example. So one of the pages in the bald eagle lesson is a notebooking page. And from what I've seen, all the units I've looked at so far, they're all this way. The first page of a lesson is always a notebooking page where they're required to to write some of the things down that they learned when you, the teacher, read the read aloud portion to them. Or sometimes for the older kids, it requires them to dig deeper and do some of their own research to find out more information about the given topic of the day. So, for example, in the bald eagle lesson for my early reader, which is my kinder, the notebooking page was diet, habitat, and one interesting fact. And then the directions also for your littles will say they can draw a picture, or if they're ready to write, they can write, or if they prefer to narrate and have you write or an older sibling write, they have that option too. And then as you go and get up to the upper levels, your middle schoolers were to write about diet, habitat, threats to the bald eagle, and the life cycle of the bald eagle. And then high school has to research even further in that subject. So that's kind of how it works. Another page in the eagle lesson was a social studies page, which my kids really found interesting. It was about symbolism, and specifically the United States Great Seal, because obviously it has the bald eagle on it. And so the early reader was able to color a picture of the Great Seal and just talk about the symbolism in the seal. And then the middle schoolers were also able to color it in, but they were able to discuss further, make some guesses about what they thought the symbolism meant, and then research it further and really dig further into what each of the items, like the olive branch and the arrows, meant in the Great Seal. So that gives you kind of an example. And it's not a lot of work, which is one of the reasons I like it. So if you're thinking, wait a minute, you're telling me it's all the subjects except for math, and it's a read aloud section and 5 pages in their workbook, and they're done for the day for all their subjects but math. Yes, that is how it works. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a second. But I wanted the very first thing that I did to be to give you sort of an overview of how the curriculum is intended to be used in case you have not seen it at all yet. Okay, so if you have seen it, I apologize that was all information you probably knew. So now we're going to move on to the next part of my review. I'm sort of breaking this up into 3 sections. So first I wanted to just give you an overview of what the curriculum is and how it's supposed to work, how it's intended to work. Next, I want to discuss with you my 4 favorite things about the curriculum. Okay, so first, number 1, my children love it. They love it. And I'll be honest with you guys, I have a struggler. He has some learning difficulties and differences, and he has struggled in school pretty much his whole life. And that has made him very much dislike school. So he often has the attitude when I say it's time to do this or it's time to do that, he'll be like, ugh, or no, or whoa. He has not done that one time with Gather Round, not once, which is huge. And my other 2 love it. I love that we're all spending time together, all 4 of us. We really do gather around our kitchen table, and we all sit right there together, and we do it together, and we just all really enjoy it. We really do. But I think it's so important for kids to love learning, and for us, Gather Round has certainly instilled a love of learning into my children. Like, they cannot wait to do the next one. I mean, like, really, they love it. They absolutely love it. I hung the birds, pictures of the birds, in order, the order they go in the lessons, up in our school area. And I mean, they're all three of them were just like, oh, tomorrow we're going to be talking about the black-capped chickadee, or oh, I can't wait till we get to the, yellow-bellied sapsucker. I'm really interested to know more about that bird. And so not only were they engaged in what we were doing that day, they were looking forward and discussing with each other the birds that were coming up, and telling my mom. They'd call her grandmother and tell her about, like, oh, we studied this today and tomorrow we're going to do this. And then when my husband would get home, they were excited to tell him what we had learned that day and what bird we had studied and what was coming next. And they just have loved it. Now, I will say, we are bird watchers anyway. That is a subject that we all really enjoy. My grandfather instilled a love of bird watching in me from the time I was a little girl, and so that has just been something that I've always enjoyed. And so I naturally, it was something I did with my children. Our yard is covered in bird feeders. We have a nature preserve fairly close to here that's a bird watching area that we like to go to. So that's always been something we really loved. So, if we ever get to a point where we're doing a unit on a subject that they're not so into, I don't know if maybe that would change. But so far, they're really looking forward to the next unit, to the next thing we've done every time. So I think that it's not just the topic of North American birds that they love so much. I just think they love the curriculum in general, which is a huge plus. Huge, especially for my struggler. So my second favorite thing is that we can all do it together, because as I mentioned before, efficiency and time management can be really tricky when you're homeschooling multiple ages. And this really enables us to streamline our homeschool day, because so much of it we can do together as a group. And it also helps me not to feel pulled in, 3 different directions all day long. While I'm working with one, and the other 2 are going, Mom, I need you, help, because we're all right there doing it together, and we're talking about the same thing together. And so I really enjoy that we're all doing it together. And I can't imagine that would be a negative for anybody. But maybe your kids prefer you one-on-one with them, or, maybe you only have one kid, so, that's not an issue for you yet. Or maybe you only have 2 children, and so that's not an issue for you either. I don't know, but it definitely has helped make our days feel just more streamlined and efficient and effective. And so I love the fact that we can all do it together, even though I have a huge age gap, 7th grade, kindergarten. So the third thing that I love is that it is faith-based. Obviously, we are Christians, and that is a priority in our home, to keep God the center of our home and the center of our education. And so the idea of using a faith-based curriculum is very appealing to me. We have used some other faith-based curriculums as well. And so that is important to me. I will say, if you are not looking for a faith-based curriculum, this curriculum may not be for you. There is a lot of scripture, Bible verses, copy work. They write down Bible verses, they memorize Bible verses, they discuss the meaning of the Bible verses. So it is a very large part of the curriculum, in my opinion, which for us is fabulous. We love that. That's a pro for us. For you, it might be a con, because if you are not looking for that type of curriculum, then obviously this would not be for you. Could you skip the Bible verses, the copy work in the Bible verses, and still use the rest of the curriculum? Probably so. I would say that would be something you could do fairly easily, and your kids would still be getting a lot out of the curriculum. But that would be something I would strongly encourage you to look into and look at the samples and things before you make the jump if you are not a fan of faith-based curriculums. And then the fourth thing that I love about it is that it's super customizable. Is that a word? Like I said, it only has 5 pages of work for your student to do per day. So if you have like a super motivated self-starter kind of kid, they could essentially finish this in probably 30 minutes a day. I mean, honestly, they probably could. And so while I don't believe that school requires an 8-hour school day, for me, I think school requires more than 30 minutes for all your subjects. So, but I like that she leaves so much open-ended and gives you all these places to go down the rabbit trails and to really dig more. And there's so much that you can add to this curriculum. I mean, it's really limitless. Like you could really drag these lessons out and these units out almost as long as you wanted. Really and truly, there's so much to add. Books, movies, YouTube videos, documentaries, arts and crafts, field trips, nature walks, just so much. There's so much that you can add that you could really make this into whatever you want. And so for some people, I understand that that is a con, because for some people, I know that you prefer an open and go, no prep. I just want to open the book and be done and do it and have everything I need right there. And you can use this curriculum that way too. This can easily be an open and go curriculum. You don't have to add to it. It is, in my opinion, plenty of work just as it is. However, for us, we have decided to add to it because, well, number one, we're enjoying it. And like I said before, I want my kids to enjoy learning. I want them to want to learn. I want learning to be a positive, fun, desirable experience for them. And so we do add things. One thing that I add is I add in my own literature curriculum. And so what that looks like for us is I choose a book that goes along with the topic that we're studying, and I make my own book study on that book. And so we read that book together and we do this book study. It includes things like comprehension questions on each chapter. It includes things like a timeline, character studies, setting studies, character maps, those kinds of things. And I understand that I am a person who taught traditional school for 17 years. I have a master's degree in education. And so that is something that I have done for many, many years, created my own curriculums, created my own materials. And so that is something I enjoy doing. And I understand that not everybody does. So that may not be an option for you. But I would encourage you, if you're looking at this and you're feeling like it might not be enough, check out the website Teachers Pay Teachers, because you can find a lot of good book studies already ready to go for you for not much money. Like you can buy a digital copy for like $8 or $10, sometimes 15 or 20, but there's so many good resources there. So if you don't feel confident coming up with your own comprehension questions or whatever to go along with a novel, check out Teachers Pay Teachers, because you might be able to find something there. So for us, we read the first book in the Guardians of the Cahul series, which is a series of books about owls. And it's fiction, and it's, the owls talk. It's not, it's not nonfiction, but it went along with our study because we were studying North American birds. And so it's all about different owl species, and this wonderful story about these owls and the trials and tribulations they're going through. And so we read that together, and Ford just basically listened. He drew some pictures, and we talked about some character qualities and stuff, but he didn't really have any written work to go along with that. But then my big kids did have a timeline. We were keeping track of important events in each chapter. We were doing some character studies. We answered comprehension questions at the end of every chapter, things like that. And then at the end, we wrote a prediction about what the next book in the series is going to be about. And then there's actually a movie based on this series. And so we watched the movie after at the end of the unit, when we had finished the read aloud of the book, we watched the movie. And so that was really fun. So I did add that to this. We have also continued to do our history curriculum that we were already doing prior to starting the Gather Round, which we do the good and the beautiful history curriculum, and we love it. And so we have continued to do that in addition to Gather Round, and obviously we have also continued to do our math, because math is the one subject that is not in Gather Round, although she is in the midst right now of writing a math curriculum. I can't remember when that's coming out, but anyway, so that's coming. So I've told you a little bit about what the curriculum is and how it's intended to be used. I've told you my 4 favorite things about the curriculum. And so now what I want to do is I want to answer a few questions that I hear both online and from my personal homeschooling friends about this curriculum. And look, by no means am I an expert. I'm not an expert on homeschooling. I'm certainly not an expert on the Gather Round curriculum. And so I don't take my word as, set in stone. These are all just my opinions and my views about all of this. But there are some things that I see repeatedly asked over and over about this curriculum. So I thought that I would share a few of those here and let you know my answer to those questions. So the first thing is printing. I will be honest with you, and I did not look into a lot of options for printing. So you can order a printed copy, a hard copy to be sent to you, or you can order digital copies to be sent to you, and then you have them printed in the manner of your choosing. I know a lot of people in the Gather Round Facebook group send off to Barnes & Noble, and then there's a printing company owned by a homeschool family that a lot of people use too, that are supposedly really affordable and do beautiful printing. So that's an option. For us, we have HP Instant Ink, and we own a business, so we print a lot from home for the business. And so for me, it felt easier and cheaper since I already paid for the instant ink and we have a pretty decent printer. It felt cheaper. It seemed most cost efficient for me to print it myself. So I will show you our Asia books. So what I did was I printed it all. I print the covers on cardstock. I have a laminator at home, so I laminate them myself, the covers, and then I print the actual content. You can see, I don't know if you can tell quality or whatever, but I print on my printer on 24-pound paper. So a little teeny tiny bit thicker than your general copy paper. And then I take them to Office Depot and really cheaply have them spiral bound. I've looked into buying a comb binder, but y'all, comb binders just don't last for me. Like, my kids tear them up in a hot minute. And spiral ones are kind of pricey. And so, like, I don't remember how much it cost to do North American Birds, but it was probably about the same because I had the same amount of books. So I had my Asia ones done fairly recently, so that's how I remember off the top of my head. So it was $18. So I printed at home. I think I have the $14.99 a month ink plan. So I was paying $14.99 a month anyway. And then I had the paper on hand anyway, and the cardstock on hand. I had the lamination on hand, so I really can't give you prices on that. So basically, I paid $18 for all of these. And I will say, for those of you who are familiar with the curriculum and you know that there are some additional resources available, like some add-ons, like the Asia unit has a cookbook to go along with it. And so what I did, instead of binding it separately because it would have cost more, I laminated the cover and I bound it together because I didn't feel like there would ever be a time when I wouldn't want these to stay together anyway. And so it just made more sense to me to bind them into one book. But I did print this part that's in the middle on cardstock and laminated it so I can easily turn to the cookbook part of this book because it's laminated. And then there are also cursive books, and y'all, my middle school's cursive is atrocious, so we decided to go ahead and do cursive. So I did the same thing for them. So they have their student notebook, and I did the same thing. I went ahead and put the cursive part of the notebook in with the same binding as their regular student notebook, but I laminated it. Again, I printed on cardstock and laminated it so it'll be quick and easy for them to find the cursive section in their book with no trouble quickly. So that is what I do to print our units. Now, if you don't have a lot of children, it might be more cost effective for you to just order the already printed versions. I don't know. We are also purchasing a unit at a time, but you can purchase a whole year's worth of units with just 10 units if you choose to do that. But for us, for right now, I may change my mind when we get to year 2 stuff, which isn't out yet. But for us right now, we're gonna buy a unit at a time. I'm gonna print it out myself and then take it to Office Depot to have it spiral bound. That has worked for us. If you can see, even my child who destroys things and is rough on things, this is his NAB one, and it looks, aside from the pencil marks all over it, why would he do that? I don't know. Aside from that, it's, and he spilled coffee on it. Yeah, see that?